Hello, it's me, Amanda Gold. I haven't been here in a while and I feel called to come back. So, hello. Some of you might know me from the Noisy Neighbors series, where I was losing my shit about how to deal with noisy neighbors. And really, what that was about was me learning how to deal with my post traumatic stress and my triggers and my mind. And I'm happy to say that things are much, much quieter in here. The world doesn't quiet down, which you all know. I see a lot of comments about, like, oh, God, if I could just move out to the country and it would be quiet. And I like to tell people that I did move out of the city that I was living in, and there's still plenty of stuff in the quieter, smaller country ish town to cause a ruckus, right? So, really, the freedom comes from when we make peace with how we're thinking about it and tending to our nervous system when it gets activated, which was happening with me. And even the slightest noise would really trigger my stress response, right? I have misophonia. I'm a recovering addict and alcoholic with a history of trauma. And so um, I was definitely um, making a bigger issue out of it. Like for me, it was I was getting disproportionately upset about this stuff. And so I wanted to pop on here today to just kind of tell you about some changes. I'm feeling called to stay to make more videos for you all on this channel, but kind of talking about different stuff now, right? Like um, but it's all connected. So I'm feeling more called to be like a spiritual companion, we'll say. I was going to say spiritual teacher, but I am still learning so much. And I really like this idea of knocking down any sort of hierarchy and rather like we're shoulder to shoulder figuring this life stuff out together. And so, what I was really talking about in dealing with noisy neighbors isn't actually about dealing with anyone out there at all. It's always about dealing with what's in here, our egoic mind, our beliefs, our unchallenged things and things that we've learned and been taught. And that's really what I'm getting excited to share more about, and being really explicit about that. So, coming back. But it was funny because I was like, what am I going to talk about? I think I'm just going to let something flow. And when I got onto the my channel, I saw some old comments um, about the noisy neighbor situation. And I thought, hey, I'll just address those while I'm here and then kind of fill you in on some updates. So, one of the questions that I saw, well, it was a comment, and I'm just going to answer it as though it were a question because I think a lot of you have it. I know I had it. The comment was, well, I deserve to have it quiet. And I'm putting a tone on it where it's like, I deserve, because that's how I said it, right? Like, that's how I justified being very miserable about what was happening around me, was this whole I deserve quiet. And what I would offer to that is that might be true, right? Like, but the fact is, oh, she said, the person said, I deserve to live somewhere without disturbance. And deserving is a tricky thing, right? Like, what do we deserve? If someone dies in a car accident, did they deserve it? No. Like, the flip side to this, when we tie up our deservingness and our worthiness and the things we want to defend and fight for, is like the fact of it is that there is a disturbance. And if that's connected to your deserving or worthiness somehow, then that can imply in your mind that you don't deserve quiet, then, right? And then that's why you feel like fighting it. I hope that makes sense. So, whether you deserve peace and quiet in your home or not is kind of irrelevant, and it creates suffering if you believe that you're not getting something you deserve, right? And then that's what triggers this fighting impulse or this misery. Like for me, I would ping pong back and forth between complete and utter despair and hopelessness and misery. I would feel completely trapped where I lived, or I would feel really aggressive and do violent things. Like, I never actually hurt anyone, but I hurt myself. And I really bad one time because I was banging on stuff and freaking out and yelling and, creating drama in the world. And I have compassion for that though, because it comes from these uninvestigated thoughts like, I deserve peace and quiet, right? And I'm curious if if you notice that you have that thought too, just check in and say, like, well, is that creating peace for me or is that creating suffering? because for me, it always created suffering. If I believe I deserve quiet and I wasn't getting it, right? Then I had to like defend and fight for myself. So when we are faced with a situation where we think we're not getting what we deserve, like if our rights are being threatened, that is something to stand up for and advocate for, right? I was a social justice activist before I became a life coach, and I still very much care about making the world a better place, right? Like a more peaceful, loving place. And yet I still come back to this work starts within, right? And just checking in to see if you're causing harm for yourself or for others with those beliefs and just questioning them. I'm not saying you don't deserve peace and quiet. I'm just saying what happens when you believe you deserve it and you're not getting it. That's what I'm really curious about today. Another one I saw, this is a good one. The comment said, "You'd burn that book." I was referring to a book in one of the videos. They'd said, "You'd burn that book if you had my neighbors," something like that. Which implies like, yeah, this stuff works, but I have it worse than you, so it won't work for me, right? And maybe this person doesn't even think it would work at all. But notice that as a belief that we can have that creates suffering for us, right? Like my problems are worse than yours, and therefore there's no hope, or there's no, I'd have to react in an angry way, or this can't be true for me, right? I fell victim to that one for many, 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 many years. I'm 40 now, and I spent up until I was 32 in suicidal depression and heroin addiction and alcoholism. And, um, I was very much committed to like, if you had a childhood like mine, you'd do heroin too. And if you had this happen to you, you'd be this way too. And it's like, okay, what do I want to do about that? Right. Like, I remember I was listening to a talk and someone said, "That's all the so what?" Oh, it's Jack Canfield, right? I think he said it in The Secret. That was one of my first forays into this work. Um, he said, "We've all had shit happen to us, right? Like maybe your noisy neighbor is louder than mine, maybe, right? Do we want to sit around measuring that? I don't think that's very valuable. But we can't, it's hard to compare those kind of things, right? And the only thing to really consider is like, how is it impacting you now? And it doesn't matter if yours is worse or better than or anything. Like we can do this on the flip side too, or we can say, well, I didn't have it as bad as him, so I should get over it, right? This happened when I was a social worker. I was dealing with, I thought I had it bad, right? And then I was working with clients who had ghastly traumatic experiences, many, many of them, right? Like lots, multiple traumatic experiences ongoing from chronic homelessness and traumatic brain injury and all sorts of things. And I use that against myself, like when I was getting burnt out and really stressed and not taking care of myself and having nightmares and things because of that work, because I wasn't taking care of myself. Um, it kept me from getting the help I needed because I'd say, well, I shouldn't be feeling this bad. I don't have it as bad as them, right? So this whole urge that we have to compare our experiences and decide like, well, this is too bad. This is worse than yours. You don't get it, right? Like I would just challenge you to question that, right? At this point in my life, I'm not interested in if my suffering is worse or better than others. I just want to be free of suffering and I want to help other people do that too. And when we're so tied to our story about like, no, you don't understand, it's this bad, we are making a case to keep our suffering, right? And I always tell people like, I'm not taking anything away from you. Like I will agree with your reality that it's causing you pain, right? Like that your neighbor is so loud that it's making your life difficult, or your thoughts about it are really challenging, or you're experiencing physical symptoms because of the stress, right? um, we don't discount what we're going through. But if it's stopping you from getting help, if it's stopping you from looking at a different way, if it's keeping you in your suffering, then it's worth looking at and it's worth releasing, right? That shit happened or is happening, but how attached do you really want to be to that? I have found that it's like dragging anchors through my life, and I'm really done with that these days. So I hope that helps. Oh, and then the third one and last one that I want to address is someone said, "Well, you're a better person than me because I've been fighting with this for 6 years and nothing's getting better." And I just want to say, I'm not a better person than you, than anyone. Like you could make a case that I'm a shittier person than many people if that were even a thing, right? I don't believe in really working hard not to do the comparison thing, which we've all been taught to do. I'm a human being with a human brain, and it gets up to shenanigans, right? And truly, this has been a self-serving mission. It's like, I don't want to suffer anymore. I want to be free. So please know that any peace that I found around noisy neighbors or my life in general is not because I'm a better person. I'm not more saintly or woke or zen or anything like that. I just really fucking insist on being free. And I have a low tolerance for anything that limits my freedom. And what I've found is the ultimate trapdoor into complete freedom, which is it's in me. I'm always the one. I'm always perpetuating the blocks and the limits. Um, and we could talk about, I don't want to invalidate things like systemic oppression and marginalized bodies and things like that. That's a thing. But what I want to offer is like when we seek our freedom within first, our emotional freedom, our spiritual freedom, we're better able to show up and dismantle systems of oppression, right? That's something that's important to me too. So yeah, I'm not a better person, just super committed to freedom and being free of suffering. Um, Not adding to things too, right? Like sometimes there are things in life that just are hard or painful. And I've learned that I don't have to add to that. I don't have to make it worse. I don't have to make it worse by saying things like, these neighbors are making a really loud sound at 2 a.m. that woke me up. And I'm going to just spin into all the stories about what a piece of shit they are and what a piece of shit I am and how I have no money to move and da 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 da. Like all that chatter. Like, I don't deserve this and it should be quieter. And you don't get it. It's so bad here, right? All of that was just keeping me in suffering. So, good news, you don't have to be a good person to whatever that is, right? To get freedom, to get free from these kind of thoughts. You just got to want it and um, stay open to suggestions, right? Like the good news about getting so desperate is you're willing to try a new way. And so if you are getting driven up a wall by noisy neighbors or anything in life, there's a way out. And it's often simpler than you might think. It just is tricky, I think, sometimes to let go of all the ego identification stuff and the parts of you that identify with having this kind of suffering or these stories or whatever. So always love to talk about that. I do one-on-one coaching still, although I'm calling it spiritual companionship now, but it doesn't matter what I call it. I help people be free. So if that's interesting to you and you want to find out more about working with me one-on-one, you certainly may reach out. Use my email address. It's kickasswithbothfeet@gmail.com. Feel free to shoot me a message. And even if you just have questions or I love having conversations and connecting with people. So if any of this has landed with you or it sparked something new in you, or if you're doing this work too and you just want to be in cahoots, it can be lonely sometimes, but there's lots of us out here, and Spirit is leading this like awakening, right? And like this leading the world into love and healing and balance. And so you're not alone if you're someone who's kind of opening up to this sort of stuff, and please feel free to reach out for help or just conversation or anything. Okay, as far as the announcement, I'm going to end this video before the 15-minute mark, hopefully. So just a quickie, I'm going to be starting a group called The Magnificent Everything. And it's just going to be magnificent and everything. If not everything, all the things, but primarily all these dots in my life that are going to be connected to help others. So it's going to be, I'm calling it a spiritual playground. It's going to be a gathering place for like-minded individuals and different-minded individuals to come and learn and grow together and to find freedom together. So there's going to be art stuff. There's going to be talks and teachings like this. There's going to be coaching. I'm going to do office hours where you can come and get coached or ask a question. We're going to bring in some tarot. I'm going to teach workshops. I'm going to bring in guests eventually. Right now, I'm just following the call and keeping it simple. So it's going to be me making videos, and there's going to be a Facebook group. So if you're interested in that, watch this channel. You can also follow me on Facebook because I'll be announcing it and talking more about it there. And I will post those links in the comments. I'll post the links to my current Facebook page so you can hang out and be friends and find out more. And my email address that I mentioned, if you want to reach out and find out about working together or just say howdy doody. I think that's everything. Thanks for watching. Those of you who did or will in the future, hello. And I'll see you next time. Bye.